What if I told you that your cravings are more than just temptations? They're a trap your brain has set for you. Every time you give in, you're reinforcing a pattern that feels impossible to break. It's not about being weak or undisciplined, it's about your brain working against you. And the scariest part, the longer you give in, the stronger those cravings get, making you feel like you'll never get out. But here's the truth, you don't have to stay stuck in this cycle. In this video, I'll show you what's really happening inside your brain and why it's not too late to take back control. We've all experienced it, the sudden urge to snack, even when we're not hungry. That voice inside your head telling you to reach for the chips, the chocolate, or anything else that satisfies that immediate need. You might think that cravings are just about willpower or poor choices, but they're actually rooted in your brain's chemistry. When you experience a craving, your brain is releasing chemicals like dopamine that create the sensation of reward and pleasure. These chemicals make you feel good in the moment, and your brain craves that feeling. The problem is, this rewarding feeling from satisfying cravings makes your brain want to repeat the behavior over and over again. The more you give in, the stronger your cravings become. Your brain starts to associate eating certain foods with instant gratification, and the cravings keep growing. This cycle makes it harder to resist the next temptation. It's a vicious loop. The more you give in, the harder it becomes to say no the next time. It's not true hunger driving you, but a conditioned response. The key to breaking this cycle is understanding how deep this mechanism goes. The reward system in your brain is activated whenever you do something that brings you pleasure, whether it's eating a delicious meal or engaging in activities that release dopamine. In the case of food, highly processed foods, those sugary, salty, or fatty options, release large amounts of dopamine. This spike in dopamine makes you feel good, creating an association between that food and positive emotions. But this is exactly why cravings are so difficult to overcome. Your brain gets a burst of pleasure every time you indulge in your cravings, and this encourages repetition. Over time, your brain begins to expect that pleasure, seeking it out in the form of the foods that caused it. This is how addictive eating patterns develop. The more you crave those foods, the harder it becomes to feel satisfied by regular meals. You begin to feel like you're chasing a high from processed food. The psychological aspect of craving is just as strong as the physical desire for food. Your brain starts to believe that the only way to feel good or reward yourself is through food. This conditioning makes it challenging to break the habit because it doesn't feel like you're just responding to hunger. It feels like a necessity. The reward system is powerful, and that instant gratification can be incredibly hard to ignore. If you've ever tried to quit a craving, you know how tough it can be to push past the urge. That's because your brain is actively pushing you towards food in order to feel that reward again. Cravings aren't just physical, they're emotional too. Many times, cravings arise when you're feeling stressed, anxious, or bored. Your brain uses food as a way to soothe emotions, creating an emotional attachment to eating. The more you use food to cope with negative emotions, the stronger this connection becomes. In fact, research shows that emotional eating is a real phenomenon, where people turn to food as a comfort during times of distress. When you're stressed, your body releases cortisol, a hormone that increases cravings for high-fat and high-sugar foods. This is your brain's way of trying to relieve the stress, seeking comfort in foods that have been associated with pleasure. Unfortunately, this only reinforces the cycle. You might feel temporarily better, but the underlying issue, whether it's stress, anxiety, or sadness, remains unresolved, and the cravings keep coming back. Understanding this connection between emotional triggers and food cravings is crucial to overcoming them. Emotional eating can feel like a solution in the short term, but over time, it can lead to further emotional distress, including guilt, shame, or frustration. These emotions can drive you back to food, creating a never-ending cycle of emotional dependence on food to cope. If you can understand that cravings are often a reaction to your emotional state, you can begin to break the pattern. Your environment plays a big role in fueling cravings. The sights, smells, and even the people around you can trigger cravings. When you're surrounded by food, whether it's in your kitchen, at a store, or on TV, your brain is constantly bombarded by cues that activate its reward system. These subtle cues make you crave more, even when you're not hungry. This is why many people struggle with cravings at home, at work, or when they're out with friends. When you see food, your brain associates that visual cue with the pleasure you'll get from eating it. The more often you encounter encounter these triggers, the harder it becomes to ignore the cravings. Changing your environment, whether that means removing temptations from your home or choosing not to engage with food-centered media, can reduce the number of cravings you face each day. The influence of your environment is even more pronounced in social settings. If you're at a party or gathering, it's easy to eat mindlessly, surrounded by food and people eating. This social aspect can make it more difficult to resist cravings because you're not only dealing with the reward system in your brain, but also with social pressures and cues. The first step to breaking the cycle is acknowledging the power cravings have over you. Understanding that cravings aren't a reflection of your willpower is key. Cravings are driven by your brain's reward system and emotional triggers, not by your personal weakness. Recognizing this gives you the space to make different choices. The second step is taking control of your environment. If you know that certain foods trigger cravings, remove them from your immediate space. It's much harder to resist a temptation when it's right in front of you. By creating an environment that supports your goals, you can reduce the cravings. Keep healthy snacks on hand or eat meals at set times to avoid constant grazing. Mindfulness can also help you become more aware of cravings when they arise. Instead of automatically reaching for the food, take a moment to pause, breathe, and reflect on why you feel the craving. Ask yourself whether you're truly hungry or if it's an emotional or environmental trigger. This brief pause can give you the mental space you need to make a more conscious decision. To truly break the cycle, you need to reprogram your brain. Your brain's reward system can be trained to respond differently, but it takes time and effort. Gradually reducing your consumption of processed foods, replacing them with healthier alternatives, can retrain your brain. For example, swapping sugary snacks for fruit or nuts helps satisfy your cravings without the addictive dopamine spike. Being kind to yourself is crucial too. Instead of feeling guilty every time you give in to a craving, approach yourself with understanding. Remember, change takes time, and each step forward counts. When you treat yourself with compassion, it's easier to stay on track and not fall back into old habits. Breaking free from cravings means creating new, healthier habits. These habits, when repeated consistently, can replace old ones. This might include eating balanced meals at regular intervals, drinking enough water, and incorporating physical activity into your routine. The more you focus on building habits that promote health, the less room there will be for cravings. Consistency is key. Each healthy choice you make chips away at the old pattern, eventually replacing it with a new one. Start by setting small, achievable goals. If you've been giving in to cravings throughout the day, try substituting just one unhealthy snack with a healthier choice. As you build these small wins, you'll feel more empowered to tackle the next craving. The more you succeed, the stronger your new habits become. Creating a healthier lifestyle isn't just about resisting cravings. It's about creating a life where cravings don't have the same power over you. As you form new habits, you'll feel more in control of your decisions, and food will no longer hold the same sway over your emotions or your daily routine. Cravings don't have to control your life. Understanding the hidden forces behind them, your brain chemistry, emotional triggers, and environmental factors empowers you to take control. By reprogramming your brain, changing your environment, and building new habits, you can finally break free from the cycle. It won't happen overnight, but with each step, you're moving toward a healthier, more empowered relationship with food. Ready to take back control? It starts now.